Hey everyone, it's Brano, and today I wanted to talk about a video that another YouTuber did. Not simply just for the YouTube video itself, but for the comment section he had. It's about a guy called Garnet who made a video about selling the game that he had been working on solo for 2 years in his off time to his company for $1 and for some royalties. So from the outset, it seems like a lot of people were telling them that he got ripped off. This is the guy, and I'm not convinced that he got ripped off. So, and this is his game. I'll just show you it a tiny bit. It's a tower defense game. Like, I'm not completely sold on this being a particularly interesting game. Maybe I'm just not seeing it in the videos, but it seems like a tower defense game. Anyway, he got a lot of comments about other people telling them that he got ripped off. And I wanted to provide a different perspective because I think what Garnet did is basically remove all risk from his project. So I think that the games industry is a pretty bad industry. And the Australian games industry is a terrible industry. Now, trust me, it is improving. It's gone from a non-viable career path to a terrible career path in Australia. So things are getting better. But you still have quite often, which is long hours and low pay. I know, I'm sure it differs from company to company, but you don't go into games to make a lot of money, especially in Australia. And one of the things that I've always found is that there's a lot of entitlement when companies do well to get paid a lot with the company. And which is like fair, because when you get companies which start getting really like certain amounts of recurring revenue every single quarter, you're kind of expecting like, okay, I'd like a bit of that because I'm getting used to being paid this much, and seeing you guys not take on risk and get paid a surplus amount, especially when you're not the people who founded the company. Yeah, I can understand the resentment there. But this is not the case for most small companies. Most small companies are just trying to survive, and it is scary to give people pay raises when you absolutely have to. Which, by the way, if you are an employee, you should not give a flying crap about any of that. You do what is in your best interest 100% of the time, but the company is taking a huge amount of risk, and you do have to appreciate that companies take on a lot of risk, especially when that risk is not with some wealthy investor, but it's out of pocket. So Jonathan Blow, I think, is going from an 8-figure millionaire to he's the guy behind Braid and The Witness, to quite possibly bankrupt within a year or two. He is going through his money so quickly. He's currently in debt. I don't think there's any chance that his game is going to make back the money that he put into it. Maybe he can still have a nice lifestyle afterwards. Just, I know, you're just 80... You only lost 80% of your money, so you've got $2 million left. Hey, that's probably the best case scenario for him. But it's just like, imagine being the person that takes on all that risk, all that financial risk, and then having people go up to you and say, hey, I'd like some royalties. And it's just like, are you serious? I now have to set up accounting to give you like a 2% royalty on this game for like, how long? 10 years indefinitely? I now have to, like, how much do you want to get paid once a week? Fuck you. It's ridiculous. So I do tend to find that people do not like to take on risks. The only people that I know that do game dev are hobbyists like me. They are young people who haven't really learned what it means to be an adult yet and are doing their one opportunity that they're given to make the best game they possibly can before their parents tell them to get a real job. You've also got VR games funded by Meta, which I know a couple of people on. I think Garnet's company was originally funded by Meta to make a VR game. And yeah, that's basically, those are the types of people. Oh, and government grants. There are people who also get government grants, and those are the people who do game dev that I know of. And I think everyone has a bit of a bias outside of people who are really involved in game dev, especially in the hobbyist community and the indie community, which is the great games are surrounded by mountains of dead games. And yeah, like, if you survive, you now have a lot of power to do what you want. But to get there is just like, I don't know, you don't want to risk everything. So I think when it comes down to it, you have to take out the fairness of this, of risk in your life, and you just got to focus on what's in your best interest and what is your opportunities. So given that Garnet is in Australia and his company was funded by Meta to make a VR game, at least that's what I believe because I know other people have done this, he would be scared of losing his job as his game recently released. And if the company doesn't have more sources of revenue incoming, that's really scary for him. So for him to sell his game to his company for $1, it being his idea and his game, and getting some royalties out of it, he's just guaranteed himself an additional couple years of employment. In addition, you're getting a lot of professionals to make this game far better than it ever would have possibly been. And this is, like, to me, living in Australia, the same country as this guy, makes it seems like it's a pretty darn good deal for Garnet, because I don't think the game was going to have a lot of financial success if he didn't do this, because once again, you're working as a hobbyist. It's like, is the game doing anything particularly special? Probably not. So, but you can now use like an increase in quality with like professional artists and sound people to make it so much better than it could have been. And maybe after that point, it has a sales pitch where like, no, this is just a really good tower defense game. Once again, I still don't quite know what makes his tower defense game different. Maybe I have to rewatch the videos. I've only been doing it as second monitor content, really. If you live in California, what Garnet did is probably the wrong choice, because Californians seem to be swimming in money. You've got all these rich people who are just throwing their money away. It's just like, well, we're still under the impression that one of your games is going to make all the money back, and we're good. And that seems to be like tech, just in general, where it's all VC capitals, and we're all expecting 1 out of 100 to 200x our money returned. And so, hey, we're completely smashing it. But we don't really have that type of money in Canberra, outside of government grants and Meta. So I'm from Canberra, and I grew up in a city. Like, in primary school, I got to see a blossoming video game industry in Canberra, my city, and it looked like I could potentially do game dev as a career. In my later years in high school, I think like just after I left high school, every single studio that was founded during that time that I was in primary school, which is elementary school for you Americans, was shut down. There was no more game dev jobs in Canberra. It was completely nuked off the planet. Like, just to put things into perspective, if you played BioShock, you would notice that there's a lot of Australian voice actors, and there's also a bit of an Australian Day reference stuff. That was 2K Australia, or Irrational Games Australia, and they were based in Canberra. They were based next to my dentist at the time. And so I thought that was really cool, and it was really devastating to see every single game dev job in Canberra get completely nuked. I know a single professional that still works as a game dev in Canberra. And that's only because he took the jump in 2008 to become an indie at the right time, just as every single job was beginning to be axed. And he's the exception. everyone else did not have that job. So, in short, I think Garnet has done an amazing job of removing the risk. Because, like, there's a lot of people you hear who make successful IPs, but they don't own them. And they complain about how they wish they didn't sell their IP and stuff. And the question that I have to ask is, like, would you have cared one bit if that IP wasn't successful? And then the next question I've got is, do you think that IP would be worth anything had the person that originally owned the IP not funded it? Like, it's just the types of things that you have to ask. Because, like, I see a lot of people who complain about publishers and companies ripping off independent developers. And, like, yeah, maybe, but quite often they're the same people who will be very quick to point out when publishers and companies don't have a viable business model. And you could say that they're not mutually exclusive. You can rip off people and have an unviable business model. But when it comes down to funding games to just being successful, unless these publishers are spending ridiculous amounts on useless crap, I think that the problem with publishers is that they're funding games that are just fundamentally too risky. And that's just the indie game market in general. The premium on risk is so discounted that if you can sell off risk and just live a decent lifestyle, I think you're doing a good job. And so I think that Garnet made the correct choice here, given the circumstances that he's in. Because, yeah, if I was in his shoes, I'd be just like, am I even going to have a job at this company within the year? Am I going to have a project that I'm working on next? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I only hear the information that he provides. But I think he's doing pretty darn well for himself. And I think it's cool that his company took on all the risk and is now going to allow his tower defense game to be more than it ever could. So that's it for me. Have a great one. Bye.